The topic that has been taking social media over with a fury. Um, Land usage in the city of Dallas. Lots of opinions about what we need to do and how do we eventually solve the crisis on making sure that we have housing of all levels that everyone can afford. So this morning, I'm joined with a returning guest, Tom Forsyth. He is the City Planning Commissioner for District 4. And then we have John Botefuhr. He ran for District 9
At the time, yeah.
at the time against Paula Blackman, City Councilwoman Paula Blackman. And so he has been part of a group that calls Forward Dallas, Backwards Dallas. So, good morning, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Good morning.
So, great topic here. Just give a little introduction about yourself. Since you're returning, I'm going to let John go first.
My name is John Botefuhr. I am by trade a chiropractor over on Garland Road near White Rock Lake, and have kind of been involved, as she mentioned, in politics and sort of the ground level of East Dallas politics. I was on the board of the East Dallas Chamber of Commerce, on the board of White Rock Lake Foundation, Good Local Markets. Just kind of been involved and kept my ear to the ground in my neighborhood.
There we go. Super important. I keep telling y'all, get involved. That's how you get to change your government. And Tom.
Yes, I'm Tom Forsyth. I live in the Oak Cliff area of Dallas, south of Keys Park, which is the second largest park in Dallas. I'm a solutions consultant for DataBank, IMX, and I've been involved, with the local community, since 2017. I was the president of my neighborhood association with the Oak Park Estates Neighborhood Association, and I served in that role for about 6 years. And also I was recently had the opportunity to serve on the Parks and Trails Subcommittee of the Bond Package Committee.
Oh, nice.
And then in February of this year, my councilwoman, Carolyn King Arnold, for District 4, appointed me to be her representative on the CPC.
All right. Well, glad to have you there.
Yes,
I
thank
feel
you.
confident when some of my troublemakers, good troublemakers, are infiltrating our government. I say infiltrating. That's not a bad thing, but very important to get involved. So, with Forward Dallas, Tom, I would like for you to kind of give kind of an overview of what the Forward Dallas plan was about.
Well, the Fort Dallas is the 2.0 version.
Okay.
It's a comprehensive plan that addresses the vision of Dallas for the land use in the future for the upcoming decades. It is the 2.0 version. The original version was drafted in 2006. And this 2.0 version is a complete rewrite of that original version. But nonetheless, it is a guide for zoning decisions that are made and other land use decisions that are made within the city of Dallas. Whenever there's like a rezoning case, the city planners from the Planning and Urban Design Department will typically refer to passages within the For Dallas plan as their justification for zoning decisions that they're making, or decisions to either approve or to deny zoning cases.
Okay,
And so it's a very important document.
Okay.
That everyone within the city needs to kind of understand or be aware of, because of the fact that it will have a lasting impact for a couple of decades.
That sure will, because I know I've looked at some old documents and whatnot in reference to my neighborhood, Queen City in South Dallas. And I know at one point we had a discussion about putting more density. Because when I was growing up, it was about 40,000 residents in South Dallas. All the schools there for DISD were capacity and had the little trailer units in the back. And so parking was a big issue that we were looking at. I hate to say this, the public transit system has just not been the greatest. When I was growing up, it would take you about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get somewhere, and multiple transfers and stops. So is that something that is also included as part of the zoning, is looking at how parking is accommodated? Because more people drive than take public transportation in Dallas.
Right. Well, there are references in the plan to, best practices for parking within the different, place types that
Okay.
exist on the plan. Like for instance, the city center, one of the parking recommendations that is in the plan is that all parking should be below ground, and that we should not
Okay.
have, above
On the
ground
street
parking, on the street parking. That's
Oh, that
something
would
the
be
plan-
nice.
That would be
Wouldn't it?
nice for this weather and hot days like this. Park in some shade.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Right.
Yeah, and it would leave the above streets, really available for what we would think of as a metropolis, public transportation, and being able to move larger groups of people in and out of places in an easier way. So, John, you have any thoughts about, how we've been looking to make these changes and accommodate
Well, I think-
lifestyles?
I think with transportation, that's a really interesting subject because I listened to this last meeting kind of at work. I'll put an earbud in and listen to it. And what I was kind of shocked to see is they really didn't include, if we want to find other areas or ways to be mobile in this town, it's not just cars. I was president of Friends of Santa Fe Trail for a while, and our bike and trail system is just amazing. It's just grown ever since I moved back here from Dallas in 2000 and watched what the Katy Trail did and how that's starting all over the city to be,
Yes.
Development. Trying to think of the right word, just flashpoints for development.
Right.
And I was shocked to see that they really didn't include the bike, not just like bike lanes and stuff like that, but also the trail system into this plan, because those are areas of transit that are going to be hot points of development, and it didn't seem like that was really, there was much of an emphasis on that during this process.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I've run on the Santa Fe, and I've also I'm part of a group that runs on Tuesdays on the Katy Trail. And one thing that I definitely like about the Santa Fe Trail, besides the length of it, is you're winding through kind of some of the backside of the neighborhoods there, so it's really accessible. But if you were taking a scooter or a bike, it's nothing to get over to the Fair Park.
Oh yeah, and you travel through a pretty good variety of socioeconomic areas, from the natural beauty of White Rock Lake all the way to Deep Ellum and back.
Yes.
And we used to have trail rides just to display that and have little pub stops along the way, and you could travel through Dallas without even crossing a road or driving or going on a road.
Right.
You still have to cross, but that's another issue on intersection safety. But
Yes, and those of
the
us.
trail system is really connecting us in ways that, and now we have like e-bikes where
Yes.
people, maybe if you're just not in the greatest physical condition, it's not nearly as intimidating to get on a bike on a nice day, which we have a lot in Dallas, and see other parts of the
Yes.
city in a way you won't see it from a road.
Yes, that is very true. And for me, it was definitely nice seeing other parts of Dallas without being in a car, because you can really take it in when you're not going 30 plus miles an hour in a car and just focused on getting to your destination.
That wasn't like this when I grew up. And
No.
it's nice.
Now, and they're going to expand the Santa Fe to go completely around Fair Park.
The loop, yeah,
Yes.
it involved. They're supposed to be extended, kind of where that parking lot is along there, and there's some development ideas.
Yeah,
But-
that's going to be nice.
Yeah.
That is definitely going to be nice. So,
Regarding
Yes.
the bike and trail,
Yes.
so I do want to be clear.
Uh-huh.
I have my reservations about the plan. I voted against the plan at the commission hearing on Thursday.
Okay.
However, there are good aspects of the plan. There is an environmental justice component to the plan. Uh, they do, talk about the benefit of the biking trails and hiking trails that we have within Dallas and the
Yes.
importance of having that connected system. They do talk about the importance of having in maintaining and protecting our tree cover. They do talk
Very
about
important.
which is very important. They do talk about the importance of trying to have a more impervious parking type of surfaces as well, and less concrete. So those aspects are in the plan.
Okay.
There's also an aspect that we want to discourage putting industrial uses next to residential uses. Like you have
Yes.
down at the Shingle Mountain area or in that area in
Yes.
Joppa, where these neighbors that are there are living next to these concrete batch plants that are causing health problems
issues,
for those
yes.
residents.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good to this plan, and that's the reason why I've been frustrated, because I wanted to see compromise regarding the housing issue, which unfortunately we haven't seen.
Okay.
And that's why I ultimately voted against the plan. But hopefully, these changes that we need to make on the housing side will get addressed when the plan goes before the council. Because the council, I think, is more attuned to the political reality of the fact that people in single-family neighborhoods are opposed to the increased density that this plan calls for in residential neighborhoods.
I can definitely, seeing that I'm accustomed to a less populated South Dallas versus when I grew up, and seeing that CF Hahn Freeway, aka now SM Wright Boulevard, has been torn down, and it has added an additional 10 to 15 minutes to get out of South Dallas. And knowing that we're having more houses being built, which is great, because that is more tax money for the city, so we can have the revenue to do more things. But at the same time, it's for me, with having more density, is for me, it just feels like we're not working with public transportation as a means to get people in and out, jobs that professional people that I want coming to South Dallas are not close to us, so we're going to be taking a car to go to work. And so it just means more traffic versus having more mass transit to get us out to downtown or get us to, North Dallas, so we're not having to get on those freeways and deal with that. And for me, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and that it feels like with having more density in the neighborhoods, we have a cart and we don't have the horse to deal with more people being in the area.
Yeah,
John?
I want to say I sat at the head of Garland Road Vision, a very similar plan to Forward Dallas, passed unanimously in 2011. A high-level view of how we want to look at development, sort of an impressionist painting of what we want Dallas to look at without getting into the details of zoning and coding and all that. And Garland Road Vision addressed that corridor.
Right.
And I want to, I don't want to be anti-Forward Dallas. That's not really the point for or against the plan. There's some really good things in the plan, and when it addresses some of these place types, city residential, it's pretty good, pretty accurate, and lined up that way in our corridors, and the idea of right here on Wheatland that a corridor of trying to bring in more businesses in with maybe more density and bring some jobs here so that people don't have to travel over the city just to earn a living and
Right.
live in their neighborhood. I mean, that's
Right.
the goal. We want
Yes.
policemen, firemen, teachers,
But,
baristas to be able
yes.
to work and live in their neighborhood.
Yes.
And this, what's kind of happened through this process, I was all for Forward Dallas from the beginning and have watched this process to a tipping point where there's something a little more political about it, into let's go after these single family neighborhoods that are established and strong to make a point, not because that's actually a good idea, but
Right.
to make a point.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're just tuning in, we're discussing Forward Dallas, the land use program with the city of Dallas, and I'm joined by Tom Forsyth, returning guest, and John Botefuhr, who is a resident over in District 9 and has sat on many organizations and groups looking at what we can do to be better stewards to our neighborhoods, and also let's not forget everyone who is there while we're trying to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to have the American dream. And so, John, you brought up a great point with, having your retail workers being able to not have to commute far, because those retail jobs typically are not high paying jobs. And so most of the apartments that I have seen being built in Dallas, they are luxury apartments. And, that's all well and good if I'm a VP and I'm making $250, $300 a year. I have the concierge, I have grocery delivery, I have my little toy, dog or whatever. And I have, someone driving me around, or I have a valet bring me my car. That's all well and good. But for your average working person, as I like to say, us commoners, we don't live that lifestyle. And so if you want me to, have this job in your neighborhood where I'm servicing you in some capacity, I don't want to have to, go live in Forney or, far out in Mesquite and commute my way in a, get around car that is not super reliable, because this is my option at the moment.
Yeah,
Yes,
and we
Tom.
increase the tax base, which is
Yes.
what we
We need.
that's also the goal. There's a lot of things
Yes.
we can all agree on that need to be done. It's the how.
Tom?
And that's one of the concerns about folks who live in single-family neighborhoods. There are single-family neighborhoods with duplex houses. And a lot of times this duplex housing is non-conforming. In other words, the zoning for the neighborhood is single-family homes, one lot, one home. However, because of the fact that a lot of these homes were built, these duplexes were built in neighborhoods back in the 20s,
Yeah.
they still continue to exist.
Yes.
And the benefit of them being non-conforming is that it discourages them being torn down, and we want to continue to have these or maintain these affordable homes.
Yes.
Because these older homes, even the duplexes, people can afford to live there. And when they tear them down and they're building and replacing them with duplexes or triplexes, where each unit is going to be, $700,000.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a property tax benefit to the city, but who can afford to live in these places? And
if I can afford that, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to buy a unit in a multiplex or a triplex duplex. No,
Right.
I have that kind of money. I want my own space
exactly.
without an adjoining neighbor.
Yeah.
Yes, John.
The goal should lead to home ownership
Yeah.
at some point. Have a dog, have a barbecue, have
Yes.
some neighbors, and develop a community.
Yes.
But in Oak Cliff, we've seen, particularly in District 1, just a lot of affordable homes being torn down and replaced with these, massive apartment complexes where the rents, are, it's several $1,000s a month.
Yeah.
And so, it just seems to me that we're forcing people middle-income people out of these neighborhoods.
Yes, it definitely feels that way.
We just recently had a case before the CPC in District 1 that was between a property between Zhang and Beckley and 5th and 6th Street, and literally they're tearing down 7 craftsman-style homes to build this massive apartment complex that's going to be like 7 or 8 stories. And it's going to be right next to a residential neighborhood. You know, and the neighbors tried to oppose it, but unfortunately, the opposition wasn't that strong, and it passed through the CPC. And, you know, one of the things that I feel that's going to be very important is that we get more neighborhood advocates on the CPC, because I think there are going to be more and more cases like this where developers are going to come in and they're going to use this plan as justification for their rezoning cases, to rezone lots that are currently zoned for residential, to rezone them for a duplex or a triplex or a multiplex.
Because, yeah, they'll just point out, well, you let them do it, so why can't I? And that is an unfortunate space, because I understand from a developer standpoint, they want to make money.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to make money. But the product that I've been seeing, I can't imagine that this product is that expensive to produce. And I know just in my neighborhood, and there's one house on my street currently listed at $339,000, $335,000. And I remember the house that was there. It was Miss Smith's house. You know, I grew up with her. I used to see her and her daughter walk to Kirkwood Temple Church around the corner, and now it's a 2-story, you know, big house, which is good because it was an empty lot. But at the same time, who wants to pay that kind of money every month where you don't have the amenities that you would think that kind of price tag calls for? Yes, John.
You don't want to be anti-development. That's kind of a dumb idea. But there are developers. I've seen with Garland Road Vision. There are developers who will do the legwork, notify the neighbors, involve the input, make adjustments to their plan before they get up to CPC. Where you're always going to have the NIMBYs and the YIMBYs, but get to a reasonable project that an area can live with. But then you have the developers that are just looking at spreadsheets up in Canada or New York or somewhere and don't care about the neighborhoods.
Right.
And that seems to be an issue. And with a plan like this, well, if it passes the way it kind of is now with this community residential versus city residential and how that's being defined right now, you're opening up the commission to be beholden to this when they go to review each one of these projects and err towards just blanket development without any sensitivity to the people that live there already and have invested into that neighborhood and community.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point with the NIMBYism. So for people that may not know what that is not in my neighborhood or not in my backyard. And I know, and I brought up the point with affordable housing because the city of Dallas got into trouble with concentrating affordable housing in certain neighborhoods in Dallas, usually disadvantaged neighborhoods where, you know, you want the affordable housing. And I understand HUD not wanting it concentrated in certain areas and spread throughout the entire city. So how do you get neighbors on board who don't necessarily want a lesser value home in their neighborhood because they're panicking thinking that it's going to bring their property values down? Y'all want to take a stab at it? We're going to solve we're going to solve world peace and affordable housing today.
Well, I don't think the Fort Dallas plan addresses housing affordability, and I think that's a whole other discussion. I think the city needs to do more to encourage the building of affordable housing, and there needs to be more single family homes that are available for sale. That's what people with families want.
Yes.
And that's unfortunately the reason why a lot of these young families who work in the city have to move to down here
The
to
surrounding
Duncanville and
cities.
DeSoto
Yes.
to find affordable housing. And so that's what we need to be doing more of. Unfortunately, I see a trend, particularly in southern Dallas, where a lot of the building that is being done is multifamily, and the construction's not the best quality.
Right.
It's just not a recipe for long-term sustainability. It's not a recipe for people being able to build wealth. People can, families build wealth when they have a home.
Through real estate, yes.
Right, exactly. And we're not providing that option for folks. And this plan, unfortunately, just encourages more of that development of multifamily and multiplexes.
Well, it just seems like, when it comes to when people speak about affordable housing, they automatically just go to apartments.
Right, yeah.
As if everyone
Right,
wants to be in a rental for the rest of their lives.
That's right.
Yes, John.
Well, I think we also kind of need to adjust what's in our minds of what affordable housing is, because you'll talk with some people and they just automatically think it's some halfway house or something they're going to build in a neighborhood, and it's not really that. It's like I said, teachers, policemen, firemen,
Social
to be able
workers.
to
Yeah.
to live in healthcare. I would say that's turned into a blue collar job these
Yeah.
days. To be able to on what they make, to be able to afford to live in that area. And we want people in our neighborhoods. You want a teacher connected to the school district that they're working in, and be a neighbor. I mean, that develops a community. So I think when we talk about affordable housing, we need to adjust that we're talking about middle income jobs in a lot of ways, not
The perception when people, I'll say it, the
Thank
perception
you.
that people will, the perception that people have about affordable housing is that the first thing in their mind is Section 8 and projects, as if we are trying to bring back the 1980s and 70s and stick those stereotypes next door to your $800,000 house. And that is not the case. Because theoretically, many commoners, as I say, can be one paycheck away from being homeless, one paycheck away from just having a crisis that puts them underwater, and they're trying to figure out life. And so if you're driving through, because West Dallas has been redeveloped, Oak Cliff, I remember Bishop Arts before everybody was like all over Bishop Arts. And some people are bringing up, when rent was $500 and $800 a month, and I'm like, baby, that was like in the early 90s. Like, I do not recall that being anything in the 2000s. But anyway, wages haven't kept up with inflation. And so if you're just automatically, thinking that is going to be the poorest of poor that's going to be living next door to you, shame on you for having that perception, because all humans have the right to have dignity,
Amen.
have the right to have housing that they can afford, and not having to spend 50 to 75% of their take-home pay just to keep a roof over their head. So, and I always bring up social workers, because typically they make $23,000 to $30,000 a year. That is less than $2,000 a month coming home. And I don't know anybody who's making that kind of money wanting to pay, and $1,200 used to be a thing for a one bedroom. It's not even that anymore. So here you're talking about professional people with master's degrees not being able to keep a roof over their head unless they have a roommate or two, just so they can pay their bills and eat and have somewhere to sleep. And so, to your point about changing the perception of affordable housing. Yes, Tom?
No, I agree 100%. The concerns that we've tried to express at the CPC regarding the Fort Dallas plan is the fact that we're not against density. It's just that there's an appropriate place for density. It should be along the major transportation corridors. It should be
Right.
near the DART stations,
Right.
where the people who want to live in these more dense housing types, are able to get to DART or to the bus system or more easily. They don't. This type of development does not need to be in the middle of a single-family neighborhood.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
and and unfortunately, there are. I mean, I have a case right now where a developer wants to build 2 4-story multifamily units on a street where all the homes are zoned for R5, and the zoning laws prevent that type of development because it's multifamily, and you can't put multifamily right next to a single-family home because of a thing called residential proximity slope. Residential proximity
Yes,
slope.
because then they can see into
Right,
your backyard
right,
and you don't have
exactly,
any
right,
privacy.
right.
And we're
So-
seeing that in East Dallas right now too.
Right.
Oh,
And so
wow.
the developer is trying to get around that restriction by doing a PD, a planned development district, so that you basically write your own rules. And
Get involved, people.
yeah, yes. And so we've had to get the neighbors involved here, and this has been one of the great things about this, is that the neighbors over in Brentwood, Trinity Heights, which is in District 4, have organized, and they've gone out to all the neighbors on that street and get them to sign petitions. They've had several community meetings. They've made it very clear to the developer that they don't want this.
Right.
One of my own colleagues on the CPC is Deborah Carpenter for District 6. She went out and visited this street, Grant Street, and she said that if these projects get approved, it'll be like detonating a bomb in the middle of that street, because basically you'll be decimating that neighborhood.
Right, and just-
and these are literally cases in front of the CPC today.
God, so the integrity of a neighborhood is very important, and I don't think people really consider, the privacy that your home affords you,
Yes.
and not having to worry about people seeing into your backyard. And I'm not saying that people are doing anything illegal, but if you want to sunbathe, or you have a pool, or you have your kids, you just don't want someone veering into your life in your
Right,
backyard.
right,
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
I have a friend over in Forest Hills that lets us use his pool, and single family detached neighborhood, all 1 story, and took my stepdaughter over there, and we all went swimming, had a good time, and I look over, and it looks like 3 stories just popped up out of nowhere, and my neighbor who owns the pool was like, yeah, we all hate it, we can't do anything about it. And that's frustrating, because you move to a place with an expectation to maybe raise a family and have that sort of privacy. And then we also have to consider our aging population. I mean, I'm Gen X. We respect our elders. And
Right.
when I moved to my house next door was a lady who survived the Holocaust living there alone. And, she lived on a fixed income, and
Right.
a little adjustment of a tax or evaluation of her home reconfigures her whole grocery money for the
Or
month.
affordability of her medications.
Yes.
Yes.
And the important point here is that zoning is supposed to, our zoning development code is supposed to prevent, egregious types of development where you have these, oversized
Mega
structures being built
Yeah.
in a single-family neighborhood. You have a height limit of like 36 feet, and unfortunately, some of these developers are going right to the edge, and sometimes even
course.
going above
Yes,
that.
yes.
Or they're doing. You have a limit on in terms of the amount of the property, the lot that can be actually built upon. It's generally like 45 or 50%, and sometimes they're going, right to the maximum there too.
Sure.
So that's what causes these big mansions to be built.
So I have a question to
Yeah.
that, but again, hey, we're here at Kingsman Coffee Company on 714 West Wheatland Road discussing the Forward Dallas plan, and how land is being used for development in the city of Dallas.
Right.
So come on out, live shows, you can become part of the conversation and hear the guests speak in person instead of tuning in online. But one of the, okay, so with these rules that are in place, does the plan take into consideration kind of like adding barriers either through landscaping or something so it kind of minimizes some of the privacy invasion? Is that part of the plan? Because I get it, development is going to happen and we're going to have to come to the middle and compromise. So are there any requirements to
Well-
put in trees or something to kind of block the views?
Well, certainly in the development code, there are, restrictions in there. Like, for instance, if you have a residential neighborhood and it abuts, some type of mixed use or commercial type of development, that there needs to be a buffer.
Yes.
As well as also, a provision for some type of, barrier. Again, there are protections in our zoning, our development code to prevent, that type of, situation that you're just describing. And this is what I want to emphasize is our development code protects us. And we need to be careful about making changes to it that would loosen the protections that are there. I'm hearing a lot of gaslighting that's going on about zoning.
Okay.
One of the commissioners at this Thursday's meeting made the comment that single-family zoning is a relic of discrimination from the past, and that it fosters segregation, it lessens diversity and inclusion, and that it also increases housing prices. And I just disagree with that very much. I mean, the Civil Rights Act, the Housing Rights Act from the 1960s all eliminated that type of discrimination.
Right.
And while there may have been vestiges of that in the distant past, in the 50s and before then, our current development code was developed in 1986 and it revised in 1991. So I just don't think it's right to try to gaslight, and make statements that are inflammatory, that say things like our zoning, regulations and development code, encourages segregation or discrimination.
Right.
I think it protects people.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that.
Well, I do want to go back to a point that you did make with regards to having the density around transportation hubs.
Right, exactly.
Because that does make sense, because that is moving people with greater ease in and out of the city so they can get to their jobs, they can get, and most of the time you have more retail around those areas to accommodate more people living there. So for me, that makes more sense. And then for those that want to have the single family, and I know we've tried to get away from bedroom communities, but I mean, in all honesty, we all kind of grew up here in bedroom community type places. And so for me, I want to keep some of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't think, I think we can all look at Dallas history, its unique history,
Yes.
and see the wrongs and see the things the way they were done. But if you're going to not look at anything in between then and now and progress we may have made, we can argue about whether that progress has been fast enough or too slow, but to just ignore that there's been any progress towards what Tom was saying, it's disingenuous. And I didn't hear that the other day, and that just seems like lazy thinking. Like, there needs to be some more detail, and even down to this fine point of the community residential place type, which I think is where the strike point is of a lot of the difference. Because I don't think anybody, the most ardent anti-forward Dallas person, unless they're just against it and don't want to listen to anything, is for what you were saying is let's develop in these corridors, let's develop around the transit areas, let's start increasing density there, and if that and as that starts to overflow, then we can come back in another 10 years and adjust some of these place types to fit some of the needs that we may need to go
In
at
the
that point.
future,
But
right.
now they're going right at single family neighborhoods for no reason, and most of us are like, oh hey, what are we doing? We're just trying to live our lives. I'm middle class. Like
Right.
why are you coming at my neighborhood?
Right. Yeah. And I've seen it with my neighborhood because I've seen the houses being destroyed and the lots, more lots than houses. And I understand, getting density there. And for my neighborhood, we just got the landmark recognition for Queen City because, as I was telling y'all, we're having the Minecraft houses being built that don't fit into the character of the neighborhood. And of course, we have the old craftsman style houses that, lends itself to the beauty and the charm of the neighborhood. And I'm all for having some modernization because we all, need to, catch up with the times, and it brings an aesthetic and a breath of fresh air to the neighborhood. But when, the biggest gripe that I have about it is that quality of construction does not match the price that they're asking for with these houses. And, as much money as I make, I could be displaced from my own neighborhood that I grew up in. And where am I going to go? I'm going to have to move to a suburb where there's less expensive housing, but that means a bigger commute for everybody in my household to get to work, to get to school, all of those things. And now our lives have just increased in cost versus not being able to stay somewhere that's more central for us.
Or
Go
you're
ahead,
going to be
John.
forced into a rental property or
Yes.
up in the suburbs, which is the exact opposite direction we want people in Dallas
Yes.
to be moving towards. We want them to own homes and grow families here.
Yes.
And be a part of the community, not like develop a family and go, well, I'm out of here, and then leave an empty lot there for, we want our population to grow, but we want it to grow smartly.
Yes.
And that's what kind of seems, watching this whole Forward Dallas process is, I get it's a high level look at things, but there's not, like, no offense to this commission, but it doesn't seem like they're looking at the details for this long-term plan. Like, if this is going to be a long-term plan that's going to be enacted for decades, like, we need to get those details down. And
Need to
particularly
get
with this
into the
community
minutia of
residential
things.
place type,
Yes.
there are blocks that have duplexes and multiplexes. Well, let's take that big yellow area and let's make a couple of colors out of it, and maybe it would be a primary use on one block here, over here. Like, I used to live on Lower Greenville. There's some blocks there. That would be great to have multiplexes in some of the blocks there. But you go a little further east, not at all.
Right.
Like, let's make that a little different color, because when these projects do come up to this commission, this commission is going to have to err towards what this plan says. I'm sure there are going to be smart people. There's going to be high level turnover of people on this commission over time, but the people there now are not going to be the same people there when this
10
thing
years
gets
from now.
officially passed.
Right,
And
yeah.
so we want something a little more detailed, a little more instructive, a little more of with community input in on it. It just doesn't feel like
That's
it's
happening.
being listened to right now. Maybe they'll correct it up at council level. Maybe it'll be more of the same. We don't know.
So, Tony, you have anything to add with that?
Well, I mean, to the point that John was making, I mean, a lot of the neighbors wanted there to be a separate single-family residential place type.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the city put single-family residential in a place type called community residential.
Okay. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, it tries to address the fact that, typically, like, for instance, in my neighborhood, Oak Park Estates and Druid Hills, you have two single-family neighborhoods that are zoned for R5. And on the edge of our neighborhood, you have a couple of apartment complexes along Ledbetter or Loop 12, which is a major road right next to a shopping center, right? And then you also in the middle of our neighborhood, you have a school.
Right.
So, their idea is that the community residential includes more than just the single family homes, but it also includes all the things that support a community, right?
Right.
Which was a fair, way to do it. And I was willing to support that concept, but the issue that we tried to get across in the changes that we tried to get made in the plan were to remove multiplexes from being a primary to a secondary use. Originally, they had multiplexes as being a primary use in the community residential place type. So, single-family residential is 75% of the community residential place type.
Okay.
And they were trying to say in the beginning that multiplexes, which are
Needed to
10
take
units,
over.
would be a primary land use in that place type. That was not appropriate. And so we finally got that changed from primary to secondary.
Okay.
But still, they continue to maintain single-family attached, which includes duplexes and triplexes and townhomes.
Okay.
They continue to maintain that as a primary land use
Okay.
in this place type. So that was the other thing we were trying to get changed. Our feeling is that any neighborhood that's zoned R, R75, R5, R75, R10, R.
Okay, so
any of those R zone
yes, I'm gonna
neighborhoods.
need you to circle back to what those mean.
You're in the weeds.
I'm sorry.
But we want him in the weeds,
Sometimes
yes.
you get too close.
In the zoning and the development code, you have residential, single-family neighborhoods. They're zone R for residential.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And so basically, in those neighborhoods, we were trying to say that in any neighborhood that's zoned for R residential, that single-family detached would be the primary land use,
Okay,
and any other housing type would be a secondary land use,
okay,
which would be fair for this place type, since single family is 75% of the community residential place type. But they refused to make that concession.
so I have a question. I'm gonna play devil's advocate on here with this, because South Dallas in its beginnings, when it was primarily Jewish, and you can still see the architecture there that reflected duplexes and multifamily in the single family area. But if you really drive around and look, the duplexes are on major streets.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, Elsie Faye Higgins, aka Hatcher Street, used to have a row of apartments, and there's still the duplexes there. So, what would be the problem of having like brownstone type townhomes in with single family houses?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate to put it in the middle of the block. I think that the appropriate place to develop, the more dense housing is going to be on the edge of the neighborhood, closer to the major streets, which is the way it is now, and most, like you had referred to a moment ago.
Yes.
So we're.
So
we're,
now, and not to interrupt
Right.
you, so I just want,
The point I want to make here, though,
Yes.
is some folks on the commission tried to say that we were trying to say that in single-family residential, that would be single-family detached only. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying that it's appropriate to have these other housing types, but they just shouldn't be categorized as the primary housing type in residential neighborhoods.
okay, so if then you have these lots that are up for sale and whatnot, that means that whatever developer gets them, they could just put whatever is there, regardless if it fits into that particular block or neighborhood.
If we categorize it as primary, then yes, and that's the problem.
Okay,
the
go ahead.
I mean,
Right.
just because you're moving to secondary use doesn't mean it's not allowable. It just means when it comes up to the commission, there's an extra bit of scrutiny of, is it actually appropriate for this block? Because ideally, okay, you want a multifamily and everything's one-story ranch-style houses right here, but now you want to build a multifamily. It's allowable, but is it primary or is it secondary? And if they look at it and go, well, it's a secondary use, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of this and what the people want, you're going to have to, as a developer, you're going to have to fight a little harder and prove it a little more, rather than put the onus on the neighbors to come out with pitchforks every time. It just doesn't seem like good planning to put that onus onto the people that have lived here and established themselves here. It should be up to the developer to make their case as to why something may need to change or what they want to do.
That's a good point to bring up, and I didn't look at it in that capacity, because let's say, you live on a street that has several blocks, and the section that you live in is more single-family, detached housing, and maybe a block or two down, it crosses, an intersection that is more highly trafficked, that seems more conducive to that type of housing.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just want to kind of level set everybody on that, because I can hear developers saying, well, you're trying to police what we build. Well, yes, to a degree, we are trying.
That's what zoning is for.
But, if you have, lovely houses with a mother-in-law suite in the backyard or garage apartment or something like that, and then all of a sudden you have this 3-story, house that's popped up in the middle, it's kind of like, well, that's sticking out like a sore thumb. And it kind of destroys the character of the neighborhood. So then anybody who sells their property, everyone else is going, where are they going to build another one of those there?
Right.
And that's what the plan wants to kind of help get away from, and kind of put some controls in place. And I know people hate being controlled, but we do have to have some rules.
Yeah.
And when you put this more dense development in the midst of a single-family neighborhood, you're also going to be increasing the property taxes for those who live next to that more dense development too.
Yes.
That's another consideration. And you brought up granny flats too.
Yes.
This is another.
Oh gosh, they have all kinds of names, don't they?
Yeah, ADUs, accessory
Yes.
dwelling units. This is another aspect of the plan that is problematic.
Okay.
Is that in the implementation section of the plan, in Chapter 4, they actually call, under housing choices, they call for making ADUs allowed anywhere in the city by right. They don't use the word by right, but it's clear when you read the language that they have in here. They're basically saying that they want to change the current process for requiring homeowners who want to build an ADU to go through the Board of Adjustment, which is a board of the city, to get approval for that ADU to be built. What they want to allow is for anyone to go, to build an ADU in their backyard by right without having to go through the city. And we don't. That's another area where I think that this is going to cause really big problems in single-family neighborhoods, because you're going to be adding.
Stuff.
They can sneak in stuff, and without requiring, to go through the current Board of Adjustment process. To me, you're just opening up a can of worms there for problematic development.
And that's I think that's probably why there's so much awareness about Fort Dallas now, because that's been tried at the council level already. Earlier last fall, I think a councilman wrote a 5-signature memo to put it by right, and this would supersede any of that stuff if that went through. Luckily, it didn't make it through committee, and the committee said no, we're not doing that, which was the right thing to do. But there is an element there, even on council, to push for some of this. So that's why a lot of neighbors now are going to continue to watch this process all the way till the end to see what these council people are going to do, or if they will dive into some of these areas that some of the neighbors aren't too happy about as it currently exists or passed the other day. If those changes will eventually be made. Hopefully they will, but if not, then I guess we have a May election coming up.
Oh, yes, and I know anyone who watched HGTV learned a lot about having an income suite, granny flat, ADU, servants' quarters, and the like, whatever name you want to call them. And I know one of my neighbors told me that there used to be an apartment on my grandmother's property, and I was like, kind of looking at it sideways. And I know that there was a push, especially in my neighborhood, and I want to say Darren Babcock was helping with this, with some of the houses that he was building in Bonton. So to have the affordable housing where you can have someone where they're the property owner, but they can rent out portions of their home and have that income suite to offset their mortgage, offset the taxes. And it was like, well, yeah, that's great, because we were trying to be creative with finding some resolutions, because it just did not seem like the city was helping with that, with making sure that people had dignity of having a place that they could live that met their budgetary needs. Because someone shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to be able to afford a place to live, and then groceries on top of that. So I can definitely see wanting to have some parameters, some controls in place for that, because you will get someone sneaky, and next thing you know, they have a triplex in their backyard.
Exactly.
Instead of just, a garage apartment, which is what you're thinking is like, 1 bedroom with a kitchen, maybe a modest little, living area, but basically an efficiency, small 1 bedroom place. And I can see that getting really out of control, but it's going to add density to an area that may not have the infrastructure to be able to handle that additional traffic flow. Go ahead, John.
No, I was agreeing. I don't have a philosophical problem with an ADU, and if you have an area of town where you can have an ADU and offset some of that income, that should be allowable. But you are also going to increase more cars in a driveway or in front of the house, and the infrastructure, and we got to be a little sensitive to certain areas can't even handle the existing, much less adding more onto it.
Right. Yes, that is something that definitely needs to be taken into consideration. But, Tom, you brought up a point that property taxes are going to go up. And part of the sale that is given to the commoners is that having this more density is going to cause your property taxes to go down, and the lies you tell.
That is not the case. Exactly.
So,
That's right.
We're being sold this, but why does it not? It's more income for the city. So why would property taxes continue to go up with having more density in the city?
You would think that they would try to address that with property tax relief. That's a whole other discussion, but it is very true that if you allow these more dense housing types within our single-family neighborhoods, like for instance, if you put this, four-story multifamily apartment complex right next to an R5 home, you tell me that's not going to increase the property taxes of the folks who are living on that street.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
These people are going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in
Right.
property tax
Exactly.
every year.
Exactly.
And if I have my little 1,200 square foot house and I'm far away, and I'm looking at paying maybe $1,200, $1,500 a year, I know I'm being probably on the low end with that. Yeah, I can see my property taxes doubling or quadrupling.
Yes.
In that, with having something like that nearby.
Yes. Plus, imagine having this type of development on a little street that only has 15 single-family homes on it, and it's a dead-end street, and you're putting one of these apartment complexes at the end of the street, and there's only one ingress and egress.
One way in, one way out.
One way in and one way out.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's going to be a nightmare trying to get into your own home.
Right.
And again,
you're
it's not being against that type of density in the city. It's where particularly we have a lot of corridors a lot of
that can handle that
can
kind
handle
of
that.
density.
And completely appropriate.
But not on a street where the homes are one story.
Yeah, I wouldn't
single
want that on
family
my
homes
street or my
over
block
R5.
right now. I mean, I moved there away from that. I lived on Lower Greenville and wanted to move to a little quieter, docile area.
Right. Yeah, and I can see, people having challenges with that, being a homeowner and seeing your home, the neighborhood, the character, the feel, the ability to move in and out. And just, I'm thinking with something like that, people come and visit, you're going to have more cars parking on your street, you're going to end up
the
having
parking,
people
right.
blocking your driveway and having more chaos with that. And there is a solution, yes.
One of the reasons why the developer here is asking for a planned development district as opposed to MF4,
Okay.
which is what this should be,
Okay.
is that the MF4, in addition to the residential proximity slope, also has parking requirements where you have to have sufficient parking for
Right.
all the people who are going to be living in this apartment, unit. There are 30 units in this complex. You know how many parking spaces there are? Only 30.
Yes.
And tell me there are only going to be 30 people living
They're
in it.
not.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. That's. There is a middle ground that we all need to come to and be smart with development. And I have made the observation that older Dallas seem to have had a little bit of thought with streets and planning. And then as we have gotten bigger and have expanded, we've kind of gotten away from that. And it's not a matter of, here's this land, what can we put on it, but being smart. So I do want people to understand that this discussion really is focused on not being against density and more people moving into Dallas. It's just being smart with it.
Right.
About where it goes.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
do
exactly.
it
Yeah.
in a way where us citizens in Dallas have a say so. Because we're not New York, we're not Minneapolis, we're not LA, we're Dallas. We're not even Fort Worth or Houston. We're Dallas. And we should have a little bit of input in it. And this Ford Dallas process right now, just watching it, it doesn't feel like the people living here are getting listened to. I mean, they're getting some, they're getting placated by saying we're listening to you, but the votes that have happened through this process
Don't reflect
don't
it.
reflect. The actions aren't reflecting the words.
Yes, Tom.
And again, to go back to what we said earlier, there needs to be more single-family housing available for these working families. And it needs to be housing that's affordable, and it needs to be a housing that someone can buy, and not just have to rent.
Right.
Right. And there's a housing complex that they built near the Mountain Creek area with about 300 homes in this neighborhood. And not a single one of them was put up for sale. They're all for rent, and they're like $2,700, $3,000 a month. It's a tragedy.
Yeah, that's not a solution for
It's
housing.
speculative development,
It's
and that's a risk. And why are we going to risk our neighborhood if, for a developer that's looking at a spreadsheet from Canada or something like that?
Right. And you talk about being discriminatory, that's not specific discrimination, but it is classist, where you're only wanting a particular dollar amount person moving into this neighborhood. And I'm sorry, $3,000 a month for rent? No, ma'am.
Yeah.
Right.
No, ma'am. No, that's not what I would be focused on, because the American dream is owning a home and not being a renter forever. And so now you have rent prices that are astronomical, and I'm saying, who's moving into these rentals, paying that kind of money? That's ridiculous.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because that's
You can drive down 35. You can see the growth through Victory Park. You can see all these coming up. I don't know who's actually moving there. Maybe we have new jobs coming in. Maybe it's employees from elsewhere, which is great. We need that.
Right.
But eventually, if those people land their roots here with that job, they're eventually going to want to move to a house in the neighborhood and have a barbecue and things like that. And it's kind of hard to do in a condo when they don't let you have a grill on your balcony.
True. And definitely we need to have a variety of housing to meet everybody's needs, but we also have to have price points that meets everyone's needs, because I remember going to school, Gen X are here too, 30% of your take home, that was dedicated to rent. That's not possible these days. And so, I hope we're not moving towards divergent where we're going to have factionless people just kind of staring at everyone else who's able to have housing and whatnot, because that is not what we're supposed to be wanting and allowing to happen in society. So, in closing, gentlemen, final thoughts. Tom?
Well, regarding the For Dallas plan, which is what we're primarily talking about today, it will now go to the city council in the fall. Hopefully the planning and urban design staff will have a final draft of the plan that incorporates all the changes that were made by the CPC on Thursday, and have that plan available several weeks in advance before it goes to the council.
Yeah, right.
Because this has been a problem, is that they've been dragging their feet in terms of making coming up with the new drafts or new versions of the plan. And like, for instance, we didn't get the June draft until literally the night before we had a CPC meeting where we were going to first start addressing it. That was just not right. And then here now, we're approving the plan with all these changes that we made on Thursday, 200 plus changes, and we approved it without actually seeing a final version of the plan with all these changes. So basically it was like signing a blank check.
That seems the exact opposite of
what you want
planning
done.
commission.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. All I's dotted, T's crossed.
That's baffling.
It's not a transparent process, and I just I have to question why there's such a rush.
Who's benefiting from the rush?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, why is that's where I don't know, why is there this rush? Because this has been going on for several years and going at an even pace. I went to a For Dallas meeting early last year at White Rock Hills Library, and there was some really good input, very similar to the input we're still hearing, but without some of these changes, and diverse input too. So I don't know why this is being rushed so hard in this way. I don't know where that's coming from. I think I heard another commissioner even say that staff has been put on pressure. By who, I don't know.
Right.
And staff makes mistakes. Like he said, there's still another draft to be done that they've already voted on. But what is that going to look like? Most of the people, the staff is really good, but it should go through one more review process through your
There should
board
be a
before it
final
passes up.
version with all these changes incorporated
Right,
into
to
it.
make
And
sure
we
that
should have
those
an opportunity to
changes
review it for a
were-
week or two,
Yeah.
and then vote on it, and
Right.
then bring it to the council.
Right.
That
Exactly.
just seems transparent for everybody.
Right.
Even if you don't like it, at least you know why.
And those changes were translated correctly. So
Yeah.
we could go all day with this conversation, and that is the whole point of why Coffee and Politics Online exists, is to bring these issues that are important to everyone to get more light shine on things. And as a resident, whether you're a property owner or not, whether it's a residential or commercial property that you own, or maybe you own both, you need to be involved. It's not just voting, it's also getting involved, attending meetings, and making your voice heard, because as you hear, there are changes and things being enacted on our behalf that are not necessarily for our benefit. And if you want things to change, you have to be involved. There is no way around it. And I know we all have busy lives and all this great stuff. And I missed the meeting on Thursday because of work. And, find out what's going on. Join a group. Find your person that stays on top of everything. share these videos, start having the conversation, ask questions. You have questions, send them to me. I'll direct them to who can give you an answer, who can get you more information about what you're concerned with. We cannot just be inactive and let our government act upon us without our approval. That was the whole point of being able to vote, is that you get to have a decision in your government, and the choices and changes that occur reflect your values and what you want, and also what is good for the collective. We can't just be looking and voting just specifically on our particular taste and screw everybody else. No, baby. We have to do it for society as a whole, because if you want, people at your beck and call, so to speak, and working in jobs that, service you in some kind of way, well, those people have dignity to be able to have housing that they can afford, to live in neighborhoods that are reflective of their culture and values, and we all have a better city as a result of it. So, thank you, gentlemen, for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
wonderful.
returning.
Yeah.
It's
That
always
was fun.
great
Yeah,
having
yeah.
you on. So I have posted our shows that are coming up. Always check the page to see what topics are coming up. I have some other shows that are in the works to have more education being brought to you every Saturday at 10 o'clock at Kingsman Coffee Company here on Wheatland Road. So until next time, take care.
That was fun. Yeah.
That was
So-